Hello everyone, I'm Lori Radke with the Greater Green Bay Chamber. Thank you for joining me today. I'm so excited to share with you that we're going to have another community conversation with Paul Belschner, President and CEO of Base Companies. Paul's been a true inspiration to downtown development, and I can't wait for you to hear his story. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Hello everyone, and welcome. Thank you for joining me for another community conversation. It's my honor and privilege to be joined with Paul Belschner, President and CEO of Base Companies. I can share with you that Paul and I have worked together for over a decade, so I'm really excited to sit down with him and have a conversation so you get the opportunity that I have to learn more about Paul, his company, and his passion for our community. Paul, welcome.
Well, thank you, Lori. Thanks for having me. As I mentioned earlier, I'm really excited about a segment called Community Conversations, and what a better partner to explain who we are as a community than the Chamber of Commerce, and talk about our attributes, but also our efforts to continue to stay where we are and get, aspire to be better.
And I think important words that you used is our efforts, right? This has been a collaborative effort. When I think about collaboration and commitment to transformation in downtown, I think about you, right? Even from a development standpoint, I've been in my role, it's going on 12 years, and I think I met you probably the first week I was here, and there's always been this drive and this passion, and so, and commitment from you about Green Bay and Greater Green Bay. And so where does that passion and commitment come from a community standpoint?
Yeah, we're deeply rooted in the community. We've been at it in downtown Green Bay for over 25 years now.
Wow.
And
time goes by
you
fast.
build upon your successes. It doesn't happen overnight. It's not easy. It doesn't happen in a straight line, but we're really proud of what we've accomplished and having fun doing it along the way.
Oh, having fun's important, right?
Yes,
for
it is.
Sure. I've had the privilege of traveling with you even in the state, outside of the state, and you talk about our community and Greater Green Bay with so much pride. So when you think about our community, what really stands out as, great attributes of our community?
Everything.
Everything?
We're a really good Green Bay. And I think you have to remember that, right? You have to be who you are. Nothing wrong with aspiring to be better, to be more, but we've done a really nice job of being a great Green Bay. And we are out selling those attributes, you and I and anybody that'll listen to us. But, when you think about the demographics and what comes with being a little bit more lightly populated than some of the communities we visited as part of the Urban Task Force and the Economic Development Strategic Plan, we can spin those around and say, hey, we don't have traffic congestion, right? We can get home in a hurry. We don't, we have a very low crime rate. We have a low cost of living. We have amazing access to health care. We've learned about how great our K through 12 education is, how the collaboration amongst higher ed doesn't exist everywhere like we're used to with a NWTC and a St. Norbert and a UWGB. So I'm proud of all of it, and I'm always selling, and I think we're going to continue to win the tight talent war.
I think so too, and we'll do it one person at a time. Paul and I even took it on ourselves to start taking young professionals out to lunch and just really talking to them about why Green Bay is such a great place. So I've enjoyed those conversations one at a time. So, Paul, I know that from a chamber perspective, we've partnered and have been really the beneficiary of a lot of your vision and big thinking. So whether it's, an example is the Urban Hub, right? So we were able to partner with you and provide really neat co-working space, and we've been able to do a tech accelerator and the Railyard. Could you talk a little bit about where does all this vision come from? Because I feel like you have these big visions, big ideas, and then you don't just talk about it, you drive it forward. And you do it in a manner that others can really benefit and partner with you to enhance that and deliver services back to the community. So really, where do those visions come from?
Well, you grabbed a lot there, right? Now I'll throw it back at you with the Economic Development Strategic Plan and what we went through, putting that plan together and involving such a broad base of our community stakeholders for 14 months before we ever decided on what the initiatives would be or who would execute those initiatives. But one of those were the Urban Task Force and our study trips. And again, we go to communities and we see shared office spaces and co-working spaces, and you see trends. And I'll I'll suggest that it's an attribute of Northeast Wisconsin to be a little bit late cyclically to trends sometimes. So we saw that with T2. I'm glad you brought that up because that's perseverance. That wasn't accepted from day one, right? We had an executive director. We were out there trying to, say, hey, look at this space. Look at this, the fiber that serves that space, the connectivity to the world. All the components were there, but the bodies weren't there in seats. And now it's probably 7 or 8 years later, and the Chamber of Commerce is in that driver's seat, and I go down to that space, and it's vibrant. Didn't happen overnight.
Right.
But we saw that vision, and we stuck to it.
Before the conversation, Paul and I were just reminiscing about it didn't happen overnight, and it's a heavy lift, and it takes a lot of people and a lot of people pulling in the same direction and not giving up, right? So
right,
that's
right.
perfect.
We've met so many partners over the years that are here with us today, right? Municipalities and chambers and economic development associations, and it really does take everybody, and I think that defines who we are.
Well said, Paul.
Thank you.
For individuals that are listening to our conversation and may not be familiar with your company, can you share just a little bit about what Base Companies does and what your role is in the community?
Yeah, we started Base Companies with an aspiration of being really good at being master developers, and that's a niche. That's a narrow path, not to be confused with construction management or other aspects of being a general contractor. But we like to be there from the start, and our first partner is generally a municipality, and we find out what they need and what they want, and then we provide a vision, the civil engineering, where the roads go, and then we go and find partners. And I think that's a little bit different, right? The development, and it can be a little bit egotistical at times, and we look at our role as putting the right butts in the right seats with partners, and we don't aspire to be in everything to everybody. I think the Railyard's a good example. We went and found multifamily partners, and our role is to bring high quality, synergistic use types together sooner than later for the community.
And that makes a difference.
It does.
And we see it.
It does.
It's
and the people make a difference. And I know our team, and I can remember using Chamber of Commerce services out at the startup hub, and taking our DISC assessments, and very, very complementary traits, amongst our team. And a similarity was a high sense of independence, and that's helpful in a startup, and you can go and tackle it.
Well, I'm glad that you're able to do that, and I think team does definitely make a difference. And so when I look at, the niche that you have, can you talk about trends or what you've seen change, like even before COVID or after, even nationally? Because you continue to be very successful and community-driven and keep that focus, and the rest of the world is changing around us. So what have you seen change from a trend perspective that you've had to pivot a little bit?
Right. Workplace flexibility, right? That I don't look at that as a product of COVID. That was there because of a tight labor market.
Sure.
And so we were living that pre-COVID. Now we're coming out, years later, and the employers, who would be our tenant or our business partner from a landlord-tenant perspective, they still have uncertainty, because now we've evolved to the question being hybrid workplaces or remote work or in-person work. So that's changed, how we have to respect the uncertainty on the other side of the table as we're trying to find those win-win outcomes.
When we talk about workplace changing, what are some key elements that you, as the president and CEO, keep in mind to keep your talent, right? Because it's important who is on our team. We just talked about that. So what is your strategy, or what advice do you have for people to keep their team intact?
Have fun. It's got to be fun. There's a lot of choices in the marketplace these days, and have been. So, stay involved. Give credit where credit's due. Allow folks to run with their passions and maintain their interests and grow and just be recognized for that. And
Try to stay out of the
sense of
way. I try to
ownership.
stay out of the way sometimes. So sometimes that's a good thing too. Is there something specific that triggered your whole thought about the rail yard? I mean, obviously that is a huge footprint in downtown. And as you're going through the process, it's already had some transformation, and I think it's beautiful. And us being down there has been an exciting process for us. But was there like one or two things that gave you that whole thought?
You know, the Chamber of Commerce building is built on 1/3 of an acre on the corner of Dousman and Broadway, and we didn't call it the Railyard Innovation District back then,
Right.
but that was one of the first catalyst pieces, and then that brought us downtown. That opened the door to meet Titletown Brewing Company.
Sure.
That added depth to our relationship with their team and Brent Weicker, and then I think we all thrived off of Brent's passion for the historic reuse of those old Larson canning buildings. Again,
Beautiful.
making aware that those trends existed in other communities, Denver, Nashville, Austin, 15 years prior to us. Sometimes you're just
Right.
fortunate to have good timing and alignment, but we started renovating some of those cannery buildings, which is what Base Companies does, right? Figures out the difficult pieces up front to make it a real project.
Sure.
Once it was available, we found out that the marketplace showed up to embrace it. And that was 2012, 13, 14. We didn't know where it was going to go, and we still don't. We know it's not a static plan,
Right.
but a lot of effort and again, great partnerships later, we've got good momentum.
That's fantastic. The buildings are absolutely beautiful, and I think to be able to hold some of the history that belongs with the buildings makes it even more special. So we've had an opportunity to talk about community. We've been able to talk about Base Companies. I'd like to talk a little bit about you and pivot so people can learn just a little bit about Paul. Can you share really a few of your past professional experiences that have shaped who you are today?
When I'm talking to young professionals, I do have a passion for my background as finance and accounting. So not the flashiest background, right? So I did enjoy working at the CPA firms. I think our young professionals and our kids, they're coming into such a vibrant entrepreneurial world that having a slight foundation in finance is healthy. You don't have to stick with that to be, for a lifetime. But if you can kind of package that up with your passion, you get up in the morning, you're ready to go, and you know how to measure your own business's results. And I just think that adds to sustainability of the business model itself. So that's one piece that I think that's unique. It took me down a real estate path, but it's all kind of fundamentals, and what you start with.
That's fantastic. I have one more question, and I'm just actually adding this listening to you. I find you so inspirational. So I know there's been challenges and different conversations that we've had, and I feel like when you're at the table and we start talking about that and sitting with you now, everything's an opportunity, right? Things aren't as bad as we think they are. And so where does all that positivity and inspiration come from?
Yeah, somehow you got to find that inside, right? And I think that's that combination of passion and perseverance. And I do enjoy talking to young professionals, and I do it frequently yet, and suggest that you're going to look back and say, how did I get through that? And that only adds more reward to the journey, right? I think back to when our kids were born, and I'm like, I go to bed at 8:30 at night now, right? We were starting case studies for our MBA coursework at 10 at night. And I'm like, how did I get through that? But you do.
Yeah.
You do. And it's just more rewarding on the back end. And I'm only halfway through, hopefully.
That's fantastic. Paul, thank you so much for your time today and sharing a little bit about the community, about your company, and certainly an insight to who you are and why you serve the community so much and at the level that you do. So thank you.